What's up, good people? Welcome into Montgomery Company. We got a legend. We have a legend on the show today, Sonny Vaccaro. So you guys might know him from the movie Air. Matt Damon just played him, but boy, does he have a wealth of knowledge about the sports business. Y'all know I love some good sports business stories. He's going to give us all those stories. I even asked him about the women's side of the game, what his thoughts are. Love what he has to say. All we needed was an opportunity. And speaking of that, that's exactly what a lot of college athletes got recently. We're coming off the heels of the WNBA draft, and I'm so excited to talk about the Atlanta Dream and what we're building over here. Do it for the dream. I better see y'all this summer, man. The big event, like for me, I know there's a lot of other things going on in sports, but the event that's happening over here was the WNBA draft. And so the Atlanta Dream, we had 3 picks, the 6th pick, the 8th pick, and the 15th pick. Boy, oh boy, did we win the draft. And listen, I'm biased. Yes, this is my squad and everything like that. But I was on the internet and there was a lot of people that also think that the Atlanta Dream, shouts to our GM, Dan Padover, shouts to our head coach, Tanisha Wright. Y'all did y'all thug thizzle. There's a lot of other people that were in the war room. I was in the room where it happened. I'm telling you right now, it's so exciting because with me, I talked about it a little bit before, but having the opportunity to add players to your organization, and not only just any players that you get to handpick in a sense of you draft them, they start their journey with you. You get to see what type of personalities you're adding, what type of energy you're adding to your group. I was so excited, and we had, Suzanne Bear, I call her, partner. She's one of the other co-owners of the Dream, as well as Larry G. All of us were present, and we had our kids there, so that was pretty cool. I had my Boop Junior there. She had her kids there as well. They're our next generation, but just seeing everything and how it's coming together, excited is an understatement. I kept telling everybody before the draft that all I want for Christmas is Haley Jones at number 6. I didn't know if she would get to us because obviously she's a superstar. She's a great player, and she has that and more effect of those things that just aren't even going to show up in the stat sheet during the games, those intangibles about her personality. And so I'm going to get right into it about the WNBA draft because, for me, everybody, Aaliyah Boston went number 1, just so you guys know, that was predicted, that was well-deserved, and she got it. And that's, I love to see it. But I'm going to specifically talk about our draft picks because hello. So starting at the 6th pick, Haley Jones, hailing out of Stanford. Boy, the amount of messages that I received from people in my WME family that are just living in the Bay Area that's like, yo, take care of it. You got a good one. Take care of her. You got a good one. All these other stuff. I was bombarded with messages. People are saying, oh, we got to do a home for the podcast. That's Haley Jones. Yes, Haley Jones has her own podcast where she interviews other players. She's interviewed players' moms. It's just a dope podcast. So you'll hear more about the Dream players in depth and what they're doing because they're going to come on the show at a certain point. But Haley Jones, as the draft is playing out, we really didn't know. She was number 1 on our wish list, but we didn't know if she would get to us. So when the 5th pick happened, and we saw that she would be available. And shouts to the 5th pick, Lou Lopez, because that's a UConn grad. UConn! But shouts to Lou for going at number 5, because then that opened up the door for Haley Jones to be our 6th pick. So again, last year we added Ryan Howard, Naz Hillman. The year before that, Ari McDonald. And so now we're starting to get to the point where look at our young core, Alicia Gray. Look at our young core, AD. We have, just so many players that we're excited to build around. And this is what our GM, Dan Padover, had to say about Haley Jones.
What's the thing you're excited most about Haley?
She's able to pass, able to shoot. Also is going to bring a steadiness to her game, just from playing at a high level her entire career. She's going to come in and be absolutely fine. Well, actually, we were joking with Ryan and Naz because they played together on the U21 AmeriCup team. So know each other well. So I think everybody's going to fit in seamlessly.
And then, boom, we had the number 8 pick. We were back like we never left, and we had Letitia Ami here. Man, I'm telling you, this girl, unique, athletic, long, just versatile in a sense of what she can do, who she can guard because of her athleticism. Super exciting. This is what our GM Dan had to say about her.
Letitia seems to be very versatile as well. I'm assuming that you saw that with her.
Yeah, Letitia's super unique. You don't see a player of her size, wingspan, athleticism every day. So I think she would tell you there's some areas of her game she wants to grow in, and we're looking forward because we think she can.
And another thing is, she played on the South Carolina Gamecock squad, and the reason I say that is because when you played on a winning team and you know what it takes to win, you know what it looks like, you've been a part of that grind to win, that's just something you can't teach. You have to experience it. It's literally why LeBron James left the Cleveland Cavaliers and took his talents to South Beach and went to Miami, because he was like, I got to learn what it looks like. We have players on our team now that knows what it looks like. Yes, at the college level is different than the pro level, but I learned what it looked like in high school, and that helped me in college where we won a championship, and that helped me in the pros. And so when you have championship DNA in your team, it just elevates everything, and that's what we got with Letitia. So I'm just excited, and we aren't done yet. That's what I'm trying to say. Draft night was lit. We still had one more pick, and a lot of times in the WNBA draft is hard because there's 144 spots available. It's the hardest pro team to make. By far, no questions. That's statistically. But then we still had the number 15 pick. A lot of times that player doesn't make the WNBA because it's so hard. But I had shouts to my guy, Woody Woods. We drafted Leah Brown, and shouts to my guy, Woody Woods, because he sent me a text, and I'm going to just tell you how life is crazy and how things always work out. He said, "This is crazy. You spoke at my boy Nard's camp a few years ago, and today you drafted one of his kids, Leah Brown, number 15th pick. That's hard." And I'm like, whoa, that's big lit. And I told her to come in hungry to camp, because for this very reason, it's hard to make teams, but you come in hungry with the talent, and it's always a possibility. So players like that, it's just it's exciting. The heartbeat, Michigan. And just so a little fun fact that we learned on the call today, shouts to Kiera on our Dream Squad. She let us know that we drafted Naz Hillman last year at the 15th pick from the University of Michigan. And this year on our 15th pick, we drafted Leah Brown, another Michigan player at 15. So 2 players from Michigan at that 15th spot. As you guys know, Naz ended up making the team. We love Naz here. And so, man, just all together as an organization, I was talking on our company call this morning, and I was just saying, we should all be excited, from not just the coaches, not just the coaching staff, not just the players that are getting other great players to build and play with, but everyone here in the Atlanta Dream should be excited for what's happening and what's going on, because we're building something special. We're building a healthy organization. Suzanne talked about that today. We're building a healthy organization. We're building a healthy mindset team. We have great leadership. The fan base, I got to shout y'all out because y'all were turned up. Y'all were turned up in the draft, during the drafts, talking about our draft picks. I got to shout out ENFP Hoops, because they sent out a tweet 2 p.m. Now, the draft happened at 7 p.m. And they sent a tweet out at 2 p.m. on draft day that said, here are our predictions for the Atlanta Dream's 3 draft picks selections tonight. And they picked exactly what we did. 6th, Haley Jones. 8th, 15th. They got it all right. It's so crazy to see y'all's investment. I'm going to see y'all this summer. We're already getting turned up. I tweeted out that it's about to be a party. It's a party. Yay. Every home game at Gateway Center Arena. Y'all better pull up on us. We're turning up. Let's go. Coming up, we have the legendary sports marketing executive, Sonny Vaccaro. Matt Damon plays him in the new movie Air, which is out in theaters now.
Want to make our top 5 list of listeners? Then subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on social.
Awesome. So we have the legend on the show today, Sonny Vaccaro, legendary former sports marketing executive, the man responsible for signing one of the greats, the logo, number 23, Michael Jordan, and then to his first sneaker deal with Nike. Sonny, welcome to Montgomery & Company.
Please be invited in with the family.
Oh, let's go.
I have a good feeling about this interview.
I love that.
It's in your hands. I'm at your disposal. Anything you have to ask, let's talk about. And I love to talk, as you should probably been briefed on. You're going to have to shut me up, young lady. So go ahead, Renee.
We will not do no such thing. I want to ask you about everything then, because we could, we've seen how it all started because of the film Air. And I want to start out with that because they're making a film that Air is out in theaters now. It's starring Ben Affleck, Chris Tucker, Viola Davis, and Matt Damon, who plays you. What were your thoughts just when you heard about this project?
I had no thoughts. Yeah, Renee, it's the biggest surprise in my life other than my wife marrying me. And, and when it all happened, I had nothing to do with it. I didn't know what was happening. I was invited by Peter Guber, who owns the film, and his company does. And I had done Soul Man. It was a documentary about 9-10 years ago with the man John Weinbach, and who produced it, and he worked for Mandalay Bay. And I went through my life causing chaos and hopefully waking up the next day to cause more. And it was the day after Super Bowl when they played in Los Angeles. I was invited to Mr. Guber's home in Beverly Hills with 15 other people that I only knew John Weinbach, and I knew who Peter Guber was. And a group of people, and Pam and I went down. And on that day, for the first time, I knew something was happening because John Weinbach told me, Sonny, we're doing a project on Michael Jordan. Would like for you, would you like to come visit us? He didn't tell me anything about it, and he invited me in, and why wouldn't I? I mean, obviously it's been a big part of my life, and a very, very controversial part, a very beautiful part, but controversial as the years have gone by. So Pam and I made the drive. We live in Palm Springs. It was 140 miles. During Super Bowl Sunday, we actually had to stay in Gallup Passage, which is like 35 miles from downtown LA where he lived. Because you couldn't get rooms. So we walk into the meeting on Monday, and there's these people there, other than the two that I told you about, and I had no idea who they were. And so Peter, after having a little coffee, whatever, blah, 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 he says to me, we brought you here because we're on a new project. And I want to brief you, right to you and your wife, that we're inviting you. You're not going to have anything to do with the script. You're not going to have anything to do with picking the actors, or anything to do with the movie, other than would like to have you be a consultant on the film. And then he said, the next words he said was, Sonny, you're a public figure. We don't have to ask you to do anything, as we don't have to ask any of the other people. And you're a public figure, Renee, and you would understand that. And as good or bad as it is, that's what it is. So we listened for 3 hours. We met all the people that were the other 15. They all said hello. And I met a young man named Alex Convoy. He was about 28 years old, and he looked like he was 8 years old. He worked for Mandalay Bay when he graduated from Southern Cal's studio, the film school. And he was an intern there, and a paid intern during the years they did Soul Man. And I never met him, so I still, just so we clear this right now, I never met him till that day I met him down there. And his first job was to edit all the film of Soul Man and put it, you're in the business, put it in special places. So when they want them, they'll go to this day's seating at 8, blah, blah, blah. I had no idea. And he did that. And he did other things, obviously, because Soul Man took 6 years to do, because we ended up with O'Bannon. We started with the kid from Trafford, and we ended up with O'Bannon. That took 6 years to finish. Now I introduced to him. And what he did, I forgot to tell you. The most important thing he did, he was now moved up in the chain, but you do remember The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan documentary, which was the most, watched show during the COVID thing, and the world watched it. Well, I had a problem with, people being interviewed for Soul Man from Nike, anything to do with Nike. It was sort of like whatever it was a sit down, okay? And that's fine. Go look at Soul Man. I was hurt. I always felt bad, but that's business. And I understood that, and I went on with my life, and everyone else went on with their life. So young Alex, I did 3.5 hours. I live in Palm Springs, 140 miles from LA. Across about a half a mile down here, we live on a golf course, was the Westin Hotel. Very famous. They just had the women's national tennis things out here. They're very, good. And that's where I hold interviews for probably the last 5 years. And they come up and they interview me. They had 8 people from LA, the guy to do the film and the audio. You know that business. And they brought in the director from Pittsburgh, who was going to direct it, because I happen to know his grandfather, who was a big celebrity in Pittsburgh. Seriously, this is all what happened. And Chili Billy, he had a big show in the 60s when I was a kid growing up on a Pittsburgh KDKA station, and I believe. So they all come in. We were friendly. We agreed to agree on I would have access to everything I said. I've done that since day one, and Pam and I will talk to you. Hopefully we get a copy of what you're doing. But on special requests like that, we've always asked for it. And we thought we'd do it. I did 3.5 hours of interviews other than going to the bathroom and having some drinks and sandwiches in between of everything I ever did with Michael. They wanted to know my history and all that stuff for The Last Stand. Time goes on, and then time expires. The show comes out, it's a hit, and if you watch 2,000 hours of you'll never see me other than my rear end getting out of the car at the famous meeting in Oregon months later. And that didn't sit well. So I had a bad taste not because of John Weinbach, for Mandalay Bay. Now life goes on. Now we're here. So Mr. Goober and all these people tell me they're going to do a film on the man who signed Michael Jordan. You're too young, but maybe people there remember there was a big movie about 100 years ago, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. He was a gunslinger. It's a famous Western. And then he got kicked out of town. Well, I was the man who signed, Michael. But I always said it, and, obviously the world knew it, but it was never given clear passage once I was gone. They fired me, just so for your record and your audience, in 1991, which is part of life. That's why that happens.
Well, why did that happen, though? I mean, I don't know the details. If it's private, no, feel free not to answer. But I'm just curious. I know it may be public, like you said, you're a public figure, but I don't know.
Renee, I don't know why they fired me either. Because Pam and I and Howard White and Michael, the last thing I did, Howard was always with Michael at the beginning. Howard was a ball player. He played at Maryland. There was a communication there. When I truly got involved in traveling the world and doing different things with him, Howard went with us because, at nighttime, Michael's a young kid. We weren't going where he was going after dinner on 7 or 8 o'clock. So the four of us go there because that was the start of the 91 Olympics, 92, whenever it was. And we went to Spain first, and Michael put the first shovel in the ground for the new stadium. And we had a private plane, too, just so you know, all over Europe because it was the Gulf War. Then we went to Germany and Paris. So the three of us traveled 12 days in Europe, first class, private plane, all this stuff. We come back from that trip. We then go to the Biltmore Hotel in Colorado because there was a Nike. We used to have trips for the coaches at Nike when I was there, and I think they still may have, where all the coaches got together, and Michael actually went one before that. So it was time to do the August trip. As soon as I came back, Pam and I went to the Biltmore. Had great meetings. We had all the things. It was all, and Michael came in also because that's when he and Magic Johnson signed out on the NBA's personal. They owned their image. Michael and Magic dropped the NBA just like the players are able to do now, and said they own the rights to their images now. They made their own special deal. I got Michael there, and so it's now August 7th, whatever. And I get a call from somebody at Nike, and we're going to have a meeting. And they wanted me to fly back up. Okay. I fly back up. I had no idea. I thought we were going to talk about, okay, Michael's back. What are we doing, Michael? And do I have any new college teams? Because that was my real job other than Michael. But then Michael became my job of signing all the college basketball teams to wear Nikes. By then, we owned everything. We had won 8 or 9 NCAA championships in that 14 years, and they never had a team in the thing. We had the greatest coaches from John Thompson, Jerry Tarkanian, Jimmy Valvano, all of them. We won everywhere across the board, okay? And I go up there, 11 years, and it took 15 minutes. I walk into the meeting, and Phil fires me. There was never, and I made a statement that's been said, and I'll say it on your program, and I said to him, I'll never forget these words, I'm like the sheriff that comes in, the guy that comes into town, and he cleans up the town of all the bad guys. You saw their Western movies, right? There's always bring a gunslinger in to beat the gunslingers, right? And I'm a crazy movie guy, and it just come out of my mouth. Most things do, and I don't know what the hell I'm saying a lot, but I know what I'm saying. And I said, I was that guy, and Phil said, yeah, I was fired in 15 minutes. I went home on the next plane. I flew in. I was going back. I got home. It was a holy day for the Catholics on that day, and Pam went to church. She went to 7:00 mass down in Santa Monica. I got back in time to go. I knew she was there rather than go home, and we went to church. And I didn't tell her till we got home. By the time we got home, somebody at Nike called most of the major coaches. My phone was off the ringer, off the court. At that time, we didn't have the kind of phones, right? Or an instant thing, or you text somebody, go whatever. And the first one I heard was from John Chaney, the late great John Chaney, and he left a message. I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. He said, "Listen, anything I can do, I'll come out there and I'll bust your goddamn door down. Let me in, because what do you need?" And then my phone ran out. I found out that the world knew that I was fired before I got home. So from that day on, I became a competitor, because in about a year or two, I went to work for Adidas, and they screwed up LeBron. I go to work for a thing, and then I left everything. So that brings you up to date. To answer your question, to this day, the only thing I can use my logical mind is I was so close to Michael, and I was so involved in the early success of Nike with the college teams, with Michael Jordan, with my personality. We then started a camp called the ABCD camp, the big time tournament in Las Vegas. These are all my ideas. Not that others didn't do them better if they did them after me, whatever. And that game, just for your audience, Renee, I was 24 years old when I started that high school all-star game. I had nothing to do with basketball. I was the worst basketball player on my team. I was only 53 kids in the class, okay? So everything after that turned out good for Sonny Vaccaro.
Wow.
And that firing was the first obstacle that Pam and I would have gone on with a great life and successful life, I believe we'd have. And that's the story. But the last dance was the last thing that I can remember connecting, other than being polite if I saw people on the street.
Wow.
And
that line that you said was, "You brought me in to clean up the place." That's the line?
That I said exactly that. I said that to Phil Knight. I was the guy that got rid of the bad guys. Just go back in your history books, everyone watching Renee's program today. Just see what their company was before the college programs. Don't wait for Michael, because Michael's then changed the world. But if there was no college programs, there would be no pros. There was some pros wearing the shoe, Renee.
Right.
But they were being paid $35,000. And there was no marketing in those days for any kind. And you had a choice between Converse, which owned every world, and then Adidas, because they had really slick clothing. It was more about their clothing. I remember Michael loved their sweatsuits. A lot of people did that time. So it was the strangest thing in my life, but it actually, through her till today, I mean, I don't know if I'd ever stayed one company, but it hurt because there wasn't a cause and effect thing. Okay, I did this, get your butt out. I was an honorary guy. I never lived there. The movie shows that I lived there sort of like, I was a transient employee for 8 years. I'd fly in for a day or two and fly home. I never lived there, and I never went to the confectionery store to see the young kid talk basketball or whatever, the things you see in a movie. I didn't live there. I went, and the day they all decided to make a deal with Michael and invited me in to have my opinion, and I said, give it to the kid. I was the least person that had something to do with Nike, because I didn't really know most of the people. I knew who Howard was, because he was a very good player at the University of Maryland. And if he wouldn't have got interested, ironically, I might have picked him he was that good. But I had nothing to do with it.
So did you even talk to his mom? That was a big storyline. Did you talk to his mom? She was played by Viola Davis in the movie.
Let me say this. I talked to his mother as we went along. I didn't talk to her immediately. I didn't know. The signature thing in that's asking, Renee, is the first meeting I had with Michael, Tony Rowan, with George Raveling, who was the best man at my wedding, was an assistant coach at the Olympic Games. So they were all in Los Angeles for the 84 Olympics, and they were practicing. And I asked George to do me a favor, and he did. His role was he drove to Tony Rowan's, met Michael, but a assistant coach friend of his, who I know to this day, named Rudy Washington, actually drove Michael, because if Bobby Knight would have known George did that, he probably would have been over the head and fired him. I mean, so George did the right thing, but he got Michael to me for the first time.
Wow.
And Michael and I and George sat down and we talked. When we were leaving, I wasn't getting. Michael told me outright, Mr. Carter, I don't know. He called Nike Nicky. He didn't know how to pronounce Nike. I probably made that mistake too. Nike, right? So
Right.
who knows about the goddess or what the hell she is? I don't want to. I didn't mean to say that, but But anyway, so he's leaving. I asked a question out of nowhere, and I've had a propensity in my life to ask maybe the right question or make the right move a lot of times. I said, "Who is your closest friend?" I thought he'd say a teammate or Coach Dean Smith, which was logical. And he said, "My parents."
Mm.
So I called Rob Strasser back that night after we met. And I said, "We're not getting this kid." It was over before it started. I wasn't going to have a second meeting. But I knew Howard White knew him. And I said, "See if Howard can find the Jordan's number in North Carolina." And Howard found the number for me. So we had a more phone situation. And then once they got to Oregon, the Jordan family and I united until, unfortunately, James's death, until today. I mean, we were involved very heavily while they were at Nike, while anything else happened. Even when they fired me, I still remain close to Mrs. Jordan to this minute.
Wow. And that's amazing. And it makes me think about how, we see name, image, and likeness. You talked about signing those college teams back in the day when you were with Nike, and that was a big deal as well. And we see in college now, there's the emergence of name, image, and likeness where players can actually get paid in college. But you played a key role in the O'Bannon versus NCAA lawsuit, which pretty much allowed players to get compensated once they've left the university because their name, image, and likeness would still be used. You're kind of like the godfather of name, image, and likeness if you think about it.
Well, you know what? And without any braggadocio, it's a fact. Because a lot of people had fought against the NCAA. You had the guy that said that they're immune from any antitrust things and all that stuff. They proclaimed themselves, Renee, free from all and every thought that contains to an athlete in the running of the NCAA and how the athletes should be treated. Otherwise, they made their own rules. Well, before I get to O'Bannon, my first thing I was arguing about at that time, the early 2000s, I was fighting against the NCAA and their rule against allowing the kids to go out of high school to the NBA. That was the first thing that drew me to Eddie and name, image, and likeness. And I remember when Brandon Jennings and he and a lot of kids weren't allowed because the NCAA or some school said their grades. One of the most embarrassing things anybody can say about another human being, that by inferring that you're not smart. Well, the very fact that someone said you didn't pass a test was able to quantify exactly what you were as a human being, which I think is obscene. But these people, the NCAA, made rules. And Brandon Jennings was the first young people. He called and said, "I'm not going to go through this." They weren't going to rule on his case specifically until January of the next year, which would have meant his whole half of his freshman year. And all he ever wanted to do was go play pro. And he called me, and I got him into Italy. Brandon Gazat, I remember the wise guy remarks against Brandon, really. In a lot of ways, it was similar to a lot of the athletes, most of them minorities, that were accused of not being able to read, write, or this or that, or they don't deserve to make as much money. All those things that people whispered and then behind your back and smiled at you when you were facing your face. But the NCAA, to me, was this group that were just the most biased, prejudiced people in the world. And I can relate to that because I was involved. Tarkanian was one of my best friends, and UNLV was probably, if you go through history, Texas Western broke everything when the 68 team plays, the all-white Kentucky team in one of the most memorial games in sports history, and they win the damn, Don Haskins wins. And I made friends with two of the kids that played on that that team to join O'Bannon. I'm getting ahead of myself, but staying on the NCAA, I know what they did to me. I mean, I was Italian. I was from Pittsburgh. I loved Las Vegas, and Tarkanian was my best friend in that school. So I went through, and I'm not going to get into that here a lot. So Brandon comes out. There were people in America that, said he shouldn't have done it. He was this, he was that. One of the highlights of my life until Brandon got, hurt, he was a hell of a pro. Played 9 years in the league.
Yep.
Should have been rookie of the year. I mean, very good player. Then he gets injured. And that happens to a lot of guys. But he was good.
Right.
And so to go to name, image, and likeness, that all transpires, and I take the next step.
That's
the next step
crazy.
And I'm going to tell your audience why. In about 1995, 96, Pammy was a very successful commercial actor. That's my wife's name. And I'm watching classic sports. Remember that? You may be too young, but they used to have all the great games, basketball and football, on ESPN. It was called Classic Sports.
Yep.
And they sold it for $116 million. I remember everything about the case, to a group of businessmen who bought it. And I'm watching the films one day, and Pammy asked me a very nice question. And what would have happened if she wouldn't have asked me? She said, Sonny, do these kids get residuals off the films? Well, she said it because she made a good living getting residuals off her.
Oh, right, because she's in the business.
Right. You do. Once you're past that third or fourth showing, you make a $5 bill for a long time, and that made me think about it. Never thought about it. So time passes, not in the back of my head. Now I'm making the move because I quit working at Reebok to support Brandon, and then we continue on, and that's when Eddie O'Bannon happens.
Wow.
In my mind.
Wow. Well, when I think about name, image, and likeness, and I know we only have a little bit longer, but when I think about name, image, and likeness, I think about, I don't know if you saw, but the women's NCAA tournament this year had explosive numbers, and then the WNBA draft was yesterday. You're a guy that watched a lot of film, you're a guy that's looked at talent for a long time and assessed not even just people, but organizations. And so when you think about the women's game in the WNBA, what are your thoughts?
What are my thoughts? How the hell did it take so long? I mean, I mean that. I mean, go back to the early girls. I mean, go back the whole way through. And I'm going to be repetitive, or someone's going to say that was Sonny. Everyone says, you know what, Renee? People can say a lot of things about life, but I witnessed it. Reggie Miller's sister. I mean, all the kids coming
Cheryl
up.
Miller.
The early ones. Go back. They forgot. The biggest sin ever happened that the NCAA did. They held kids, guilty to belong to them for all these years. From O'Bannon on, they don't get paid. What about the thousands and thousands of kids? Not only did they didn't get paid, a lot of the kids got injured. A lot of the things, didn't get an education. They got a degree. But most important to me in the women thing, and I am, I'm not distant for your program and all that sort of stuff, and I'm not saying it for kudos for Sonny. The women actually saved the world. You know where it all started? The gymnasts, the soccer girls, totally out. But the gymnasts did more. Down there in that horrible camp, for the training for the Olympics and all that stuff, when the girls started saying they were being molested. That was the key. That was the key turning. It wasn't so much athletic, Renee, because women then, for the first time, went against an obstacle that had been facing them forever, that they were this vulnerable sex. These vulnerable people, women, young girls, they were always subservient through history. I'm not trying to make history on your program, and because you're, a minority, you're black. I'm telling you the things I thought of. I always thought about the girls. And then when you go to Michigan State, you got all the things that happened. But the thing that changed it for the basketball girls, when 3 years ago, I forget the girl, might have been from Oregon, she went into the locker rooms for the NCAA tournament, and they were like going to a cesspool. They were, they didn't have anything to boy. And that was the first time America, forget they didn't get the amenities of the boys, that they were treated like 10th class citizens again. The NCAA didn't give a damn about them. They had to have, because of Title IX, or that would have been, obscene to even think that they would have.
That was Sedona Prince, who went and recorded the weight room and went and recorded the various differences that she noticed in the men's March Madness and the women's March Madness.
And look where we're at. Last 2 years, and look what Connecticut and South Carolina have done. Look what those two counties, and they started back in Tennessee years ago.
Right.
It wasn't like girls are incapable of doing anything. It's like girls were never allowed the opportunity. We're still fighting for voting rights, appeals, and we haven't gotten anywhere. But the one place in my life, and I'm 83, Renee,
Wow.
the one thing that's been as open to everything are the artists. The artists, not so many the ones that draw, the ones that sing, the ones that act, the ones that play an instrument. That's where, even in my world, the Italian world, the early immigrants, if we could do something that wasn't you had to go through a corporate or a business or you were prejudged, because no one can prejudge you if you can sing or if you can dance or if you can throw a basketball in a hoop. If you did it, you were allowed. And remember, because I'm sure you know history. Remember when most of the black actors and singers and everything used to go to France, go to Italy, go to get out of America to perform? That always happened. But what has now happened, because finally, the girls held each other's hand. Helen Redding last night, I watched the thing again. And, I Am Woman. I mean, a lot of people, and I liked her voice and I liked her, but I didn't pay attention. But I watched the ending again last night. I knew I was doing you. And I said, she was very good. Thousands were. But that song gave strength to movements. The marches, it gave strength. What we do well, but because we're not all in position to change things right away, what we do well is things that they never thought we could do well. And when we could sing and dance and play basketball and do anything, mostly people, if given the opportunity, given a chance to be educated or given the exposure. Look at Victor, this kid from France. Basketball.
Victor Wembanyama.
Yeah, look what's happened. I mean, look at the two girls who went 1-2. I mean, people we don't know who went 1-2 5 years ago. I'll bet you a dime. Even though they're, Diana and all those girls. I mean, my God. I mean, look what they've done, and look what they do in tennis. And you know what? Let me say this, and I know you're against the clock. You know what's interesting to me? And I said maybe 30, 40 years ago.
What's that?
I really disliked England most of my life. First of all, they changed the whole church because the king wanted to marry again, so he chopped everybody's head off. So I just wanted to put that in for drama. But England is like that tennis thing and that golf thing in England and Scotland. I mean, they told you in 1900 they were racist. You couldn't play. You couldn't join the club. You couldn't do whatever. This stuff with the Masters, like this guy telling me, and I'm not getting into the LIV and all that stuff, but it took 1,000 years to get to get involved. I mean, it's so pathetic in America today. We are still living here, and it hasn't gotten better. But what I believe that sports is changing America, and the actors and the Denzel Washington of the world, the people that that were never given a chance before. I mean, they could always be like those. I always say, but going back to England, nothing against. I mean, they're brilliant. The greatest writers, greatest actors. I'm not saying individuals. But everything's dictated by the country. Everything is by that, a small majority of whatever with the power to do anything. So I witnessed a lot. I'm proudest the most of my life of O'Bannon. But what I've enjoyed, and I couldn't tell you, I was rooting for Dawn to go 39-0, 39-0, 39-0. I mean, you know what? That's never been done. That's wonderful. And this girl comes from Philadelphia. She's like going to do this and go to South Carolina where there ain't been a black person got recognition since I don't know what. And I'm just telling you how beautiful that was to watch.
Wow.
Look where I go. I just go places.
Listen, Mr. Sonny, I love it. Like, I love your storytelling. I would listen to you talk all day. I want to ask just one more question, sure. Because we need to bottle up what's in your mind right now, because you said you're 83. You've lived it. You've breathed it. You've seen what generational talent looks like. Not once. We talked about you signed Michael Jordan. You also signed Kobe Bryant. And so I have kind of a twofold question of what, from somebody like you that has signed generational talent before, what are those things that you see on tape that are those intangibles in players that you know when you see it? And then what do you want your legacy, Mr. Sonny, to be? Because you've done a lot, as you talked about. What does your legacy look like?
You know what? I hope that I didn't offend anybody. I hope that they think the kid from Trafford tried. And as far as the first question, Renee, I can't explain that because somewhere in the line, someone's given a gift. I had nothing to do with basketball. I love baseball and football. It was the last thing in my life. Why I was able to, and I was able to do that almost instinctively. I did. But let me tell you two things that stuck in my mind forever. And it's Kobe and Michael. If you allow me 5 minutes, I'll give you two stories to connect them at the hip forever.
Please do.
Right? They weren't, I only saw Kobe once in my life. I never saw him before he came to ABCD camp. And a good friend of mine, Joe Bryant, was the most valuable player at my All-Star game at 1972 Round Ball Classic. His mother's last name is Pam Cox. Her last name is Cox. Chubby Cox, her brother, was a great college player. He went to the University of San Francisco. I knew the parents before he was born, before they knew they were getting married. So now it's 25 years later, something like that, in the 20s. I get a call from Gary Charles, my good friend. And he said, Sonny, Joe Bryant called me, and he's back, and I know he knows you from the round ball. He didn't know how to get a hold of me. He said he wants to contact you. He wants to bring his son to ABCD camp. My camp, unlike the tricky camp at McDonald's, was not an all-star camp. We weren't an all-American. We were an all that. We picked the best kids we thought were worthy of playing. There was no politics involved. There was no this or that. So I was going to take Kobe if he was as bad as me, because he was my friend. He helped my life. Okay, so now we're at camp, and it's the day before we're opening, or the first day of registration. And Gary comes, Sonny. So I brought the Bryants over to you and their son Kobe. That was the first time I saw Joe. I never met Pam before because obviously I didn't meet her at the Dapper Dam. All these years, and he introduced me to Kobe. Now Kobe starts. He's in the camp. Joe and Pam stay there. I go see him as I did 140 other kids. And he had no references. It wasn't like he came in all state. He didn't play any in America. Camp's over. Big lesson number one to Sonny. And I'll give you Michael a second. He comes over and said, Mr. Vaccaro, I want to thank you for inviting me to camp. I said, Kobe, thank you for coming. You did well. He said, no, I didn't. I said, what do you mean? I'm going to tell you, Mr. Vaccaro, I'm coming back to the camp next year, and I'm going to be the best player in the whole camp. He said that. I'm coming back. And also, Renee, he made the all, junior team. He played in the All-Star game. It wasn't like people didn't know. But he just said
he wanted to come back to dominate, huh?
That's right. That's him. Now we're going to go back. It's like we're in that tour of Germany. We're like with Michael and Howard and Pammy and me. So we're on that tour, and he's playing He's playing a game against the Army base. His brother was in the Army, so we played the Army teams in Germany. And the deal was Michael was going to play 10 minutes, and that's it, against the Army. So he played for Army Team 1 and then Army Team 2. So before he started the game. So they're all warming up. The gym, however big it was, all the soldiers were there. Whatever it was sold out. It may not be 2,000 people, but it was the gym we played in. So Howard says to me, son, Mike hasn't come back yet. I said, I'll go get him. I think he would go to the bathroom. I walk in, and Mike, it's a latrine. It's not a men's or women's thing that we have today. They're at least cleaned up and they got their own little stalls. It's a latrine. And a lot of the men, maybe the girls don't know what a latrine is, but it was not a very clean, popular place to go just do your business, right? Okay. So Michael's sitting on this long bench next to the latrine. And he had a basketball and he's bouncing it. I go in, I say, Mike, we got to go. I can see it now, and I love telling this story, and I've been saying it a lot since the movie because most of the guys asked me what was the most defining moment. It wasn't him dunking, it wasn't him it was that moment in Germany. He looks up to me and said, "Son, I'll be okay. Give me another minute. Go ahead back." You know what he said to me?
What?
He was getting ready to play a basketball game that meant nothing for 10 minutes and 10 minutes, and he wasn't going to go out there and be a fool. He was going to go out there, and let me tell you, this is a true story. First half, Michael team's winning by 20. He's kicking their butt. Second half, he comes back and beats his team. That happened. Like, he beat both teams.
So he was winning on the first half, and then he went.
Yeah, he went against the score is now 40-20. Let's just say that. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Now the next score, the end of the game, he played all 40 minutes. He played 20 minutes. He didn't take a break, and he won like 82-80. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Crazy.
and that's what Kobe said. Kobe said, "I'm going to be the best." And Michael said, "If I'm playing a game against you, Sonny, I'm going to beat you." And that's what.
It's that mentality.
That's who they were. That's what separates you. You know, you're a great sports fan, and you know athletics, and you know people that are serious athletes. You know what separates them?
What's that?
The game.
Yeah.
It means too much. There's a lot of kids, girls and boys. I don't know as many girls. I probably only know the best ones. But in the men's thing, in today's society, there are more great players than when I was running my camps. The kids are better now. They're exposed. All this BS about this and that. These kids are ready to play at an early age. We know who they are at an early age. It used to be some wealthy kids went to a camp somewhere. Most of the kids, including Sonny Vaccaro, had a pool up there, and they put a little basket on the telephone pole, and you were and you had to get off when the cars were coming, or you were in a dust ball.
Yeah.
Tracy made a trip to Africa, and he came back and he saw the soccer players and some dudes. I always remember this. Tracy is probably the kid I got closest to my whole life. He's still involved in our life, and he told me about the conditions. He wanted to build a soccer field and a basketball court. And you stop and think about it, because you know what? Of all the countries and all the worlds that we have existing, and countries change their names, probably the most misleading country in the history of mankind is Africa. It's probably how it always has that been. And probably because the color of the skin of the individuals are there, and because they didn't have a chance for education or whatever. I have no idea, Renee. I'm not prophesizing here. I'm not trying to impress anybody. But if you're honest, and then you come down to 2023, and this kid, now we've had a lot of foreign kids, foreign countries. The foreigners are just as good as us now, just so we understand that. Those kids can play.
Well, definitely. If you look at the past MVPs in the NBA, you're going to see that a lot of players are international players, definitely.
Who would have thought of Giannis doing it? I mean, if they had to win it this year it's almost impossible to believe these sort of things, right? But what I'm saying is sport and individuals, there's a phrase, a God-given talent. The sad part, they don't finish it, but few have chance to use that talent. So there we go.
I love that. Listen, like I said, I could have talked to you all day. You're a legend. What you've done to the game, you said you want your legacy to be that you hope you didn't offend anyone. You did the opposite of that. I mean, you built, and I know, like you said, you didn't make them who they are, but you were the vehicle. Like when somebody signs a shoe deal, that could change their life. I'm sure that when a player used to sign a shoe deal, they didn't know that was a life-changing decision. We see players now, Steph Curry, who signed a deal with Under Armour, and he has his own Curry brand. Those type of things were made a thing because you were the first one to get creative and be like, yeah, so what? Let's make the shoe match the guy, or bring in the guy and making him an elevated superstar. You were a part of that. So I thank you for joining me here on Montgomery & Company.
One more minute?
Please, all the time you need.
Okay. You know what? LeBron will get his. Seth got his. Grant Hill had something or whatever. But you know what? None of this happens without Michael Jordan. None of this. Michael did it. So, and Michael, Nike would have been successful, and you can't play results, Renee. But I'll tell you what, just use common sense. Michael Jordan doesn't hit it, that'd have been like, well, I don't want to say one of those other things. That doesn't mean Phil Knight isn't smart. That means we all got lucky in '84.
Mm-hmm.
But Michael will be remembered more after he's gone, not because he might have been the GOAT, because I don't know what the GOAT is. I think the GOAT, in my personal opinion, is the guy who was the best in the decade, because I think it's hard to replicate what happened 50 years ago. Will Chamberlain, obviously, you're talking crazy. I mean, Bill Russell, the games were different, that's all.
Right.
But Michael did something, he opened the door for athletes to be a part of the ownership who are employing them. That was never thought of before. He gave identity to these athletes who can earn. He gave them the guts, and then slowly but surely, all the whatever. Do you really think the word air, you just put the word air on that movie, and they know what the hell it is? I mean, it could have been Febreze, that thing that has a good smell. Look underneath the bottle, it says air.
It does.
What if they had put that on? They thought it was Febreze. But I'm saying, but the world knows who Air is. It's Michael.
Right.
I haven't seen Michael in a long time, but Michael, his heritage, his great grandchildren, we may not even have basketball, but he opened up an industry. He's no different than Bill Gates and all these other guys who were brilliant in the times that they lived in. And they created something that'll live forever. That's what I wanted to say last.
No, that is beautifully well said. I know you're a sports guy through and through, and you probably watch all the basketball you can watch. But as you know, I'm one of the co-owner and vice presidents of the Atlanta Dream here in the WNBA. So you have an open invitation to come and just take in a game. I would love to watch a game with you if you ever are in Atlanta in the summer, because I just think, your thoughts on sports in general. I mean, it's like Jordans are a lifestyle now. It's not even just a shoe brand. Like, people literally dedicate their life to buying, reselling a brand that you were a part of creating. So, you always have an open invitation. Man, from Kobe Bryant to Michael Jordan, he even brought up Victor Wembanyama, who's probably going to be the #1 draft in the NBA. We got Aaliyah Boston, the #1 draft pick in the WNBA this year. Haley Jones, just all of these players. I was trying to get in his mind to figure out, what is that greatness like? Can you see it? Can you actually see it on camera? Can you actually see it on film? He's touched it. He's signed greatness. He's been around greatness. I wanted to know, from his eyes, what that was like. And I think we got that. He talked about greatness is being competitive at every single moment. And so I wanted to be a great player, and now I want to be a great vice president and a great owner, because it's a generational thing here at MoCo.